Happy Halloween! And welcome back to a final installment of this year's Interpreting the Scares event. We have made it through the month without a hitch, and we are finishing it off with the same series that we started with, Hellraiser, with the 10th and final, thus far, film in the series. This one's called Hellraiser Judgment. Hellraiser Judgment follows a detective on the hunt for a serial killer known only as the Preceptor, who kills people based off of the 10 Commandments. In the background is also Pinhead and the Cenobites, who, thinking the puzzle box is obsolete at this point, start luring in the worst sinners out there in order to force them into an assessment of their guilt. But when they run into the detective, things don't go according to plan. For a 10th film in any series, you both expect the film in question to be horrible and good at the same time. I mean, horrible because the previous films in this same franchise haven't really been that good. And any given horror franchise that gets this far, it's rarely that great. You also expect it to be good because it's the final film in the franchise. Thus far, anyway. Me personally, I sometimes want a sense of finality in movies like this, even though I know it's highly unlikely. They've killed off Pinhead like 5 times in the series so far, so I figure you can't really do that. What they do happen to do in this one, though, I actually thought was pretty smart. Do I think that Judgment is the best Hellraiser film out there? No, not by a long shot, but it is a whole lot better than I thought it would be, and one of the most creative films in the whole bunch. There's this process that we see in the beginning of the film with an auditor, assessors, and jurors that was pretty darn disgusting and very well thought out at the same time. They have this person that they're auditing confess their sins. They write out those sins on paper, and then they have an assessor come in and eat those written confessions with slimy tears of children drizzled on top. Then, sick of the sins, this assessor vomits into a tube, and those jurors get on their hands and knees and stick their hands into the vomit and feel around, and that's how they get their guilty or innocent verdict. There's so many moving parts to what's going on here, and again, it's revolting. But it's also clever in the ever messed up world of Hellraiser. It is easily one of the most creative things that I've actually seen done in the series. It was the first time I didn't necessarily think that Pinhead was needed in order for it to feel like Hellraiser. You know, there are other forms of torture out there, other demented villainous creatures out there. Cenobites. Pinhead is in this movie, don't get me wrong. He just kind of seems to be an overseer of sorts in the background. He only steps in when it's necessary, and I like that about this movie. I also love that they introduced the opposite of the hell dimension in this film, which of course is like their version of heaven and angels, and of course they did that. It makes so much sense. There always needs to be a balance. What about some negatives though? Well, this far into the franchise, one thing's for darn certain. You don't need to see it. The only people watching it at this point are pretty much hardcore fans in it for the long haul anyway, so if you watch it, you are always planning to regardless. So it never really had to try that hard from a production level to be impressive. So yes, it feels amateur at times, indie really, and that's not a horrible thing, but it does affect some areas of acting, and sometimes the lighting and color just appear to be basic filters, and the narrative of the detective thing is definitely going to be compared to a cheap version of that movie 7, so that definitely isn't all that original. Integral to the end of the film, sure, but there's a lot of procedural cop stuff going on in this film that I'm pretty sure nobody will really care that much about. So, let's go ahead and break down the final score one last time for this year's Interpreting the Scares event. From an unbiased technical level, Hellraiser Judgment is clearly better than the series has been for a little while. It's not the best Hellraiser film, nor is it the worst, but rather somewhere in between. Some of the practical effects for the gore wasn't too bad, and the creative choices for the writing finally did something new in the series that it was desperately needing for a long time. Pinhead is recast once again, but this one is miles better than in Revelations. You can tell it isn't Doug Bradley, but because he's mostly in the background here, it doesn't make that big of a difference. Overall, it's fair. My unbiased score is 66%, but because I had a lot more fun with this film than I thought I actually would, my bias score is going to be a little bit higher. It's the first Hellraiser film in a long while to make me kind of feel sick watching. In a good way. The original had that effect because of the level of gore and practical effects surrounding Uncle Frank as he returned to life. This movie, it was because of that auditing process which is just insane. This bias score is 74%. When we average out the two scores together, we come to the final rating of 70%. 70 out of 100 possible stars, or a B- letter grade. And currently, it's in my top 5 Hellraiser films. To quickly kind of give you a rundown of what I consider to be my top 5 from worst to best, they would be Hellraiser 2, Hellraiser Judgment, Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth, Hellraiser 1, and my best rated Hellraiser film, Hellraiser Inferno. That movie's just really deep, and coincidentally also the only Hellraiser film that I gave an A- letter grade to. Everything else was B's to low D's. But yeah, guys, let me know your thoughts on this final Hellraiser film in the comment section down below, and how you rank them all. As for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out.
Dave examines movies we just watch for fun. Davey is the expert.